Everyone, welcome to this session with Casey Hobson on how to price your virtual event. Casey, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the delay here. I'd like to talk to you today about how to price your virtual conference. My name is Casey Hobson. I'm the president and founder of Event Rebels. We produce a conference and event management software for conferences and trade shows. Yes, so Casey Hobson, Event Rebels. I'd like to talk to you today about virtual pricing. I'm just going to go ahead and go straight through regardless of the slides so you guys get some information. We've had a lot of experience with virtual conferences over the last few years, and hopefully I can share with you some important tips that will help you successfully price your virtual conference. The first thing is face-to-face events are different from virtual events. If you don't get that difference, you're going to be in a tough situation. Virtual events are very different and have to be thought through in a different kind of way. Some of the big ways they're different. The biggest thing I think is expenses. I think this is where people need to get a handle on things. The attendee doesn't need to travel. They don't need a hotel room. Time is kind of exploded on virtual. You're not constrained by time. You're not stuck in a hotel room between 2 or 3 days. Can I enlarge these slides? Okay. So the other thing about virtual events is you can kind of scale as you need. It's a lot easier to scale in virtual than in a hotel room. If the hotel room's full, it's full. Basically there's a limited opportunity to be on site. If you're not on site, it's over. But in virtual, you can attend in person virtually or both. So you can basically have the conference before the conference, after the conference, during the conference. All right, let's see. Okay, now we're getting to the next slide here. So I'm going to skip these and go into this one. The big things where they're different. Like I said, time has exploded. Big trend we've seen in virtual is more days but shorter. Rather than a few action-packed days like you have in a hotel. I've seen people where they maybe over 5 days might have 3 hours of content each day. I've even heard of one that went basically broke it over the course of a month. Now, a lot of that's augmented by on-demand recordings, which we're a big fan of. Geography is the other thing. When you're on the internet, you're not necessarily going to your normal audience. We've seen local events become regional events become national, and national events become international. Capacity is the same thing. Hotel, if the room's full, it's full. But now with virtual, it's really easy to scale to large numbers in virtual. I'll give you some case studies there too. And time zones is an interesting phenomenon. We never had to worry about it. If you had a conference in Los Angeles, that was your time zone. Well, now with virtual, the virtual is all over the world. I think PCMA and their convening leaders actually had a floating schedule where they had the Asia in the morning, Africa, Europe in the afternoon, North America throughout the day. So a lot of interesting possibilities with time zones, and it's certainly something you need to think about because you're going to often get clientele that you wouldn't normally get. The other opportunities, the analytics are incredible in virtual, not anonymized like you have in trade shows. Who did what and when. And then, of course, the biggest thing, what we're big fans of is reselling the recordings. Face-to-face is coming back slowly but surely. People are very excited about it. But I think you need to plan on having a virtual aspect to it. Even if you think people are going to show up, as you know, the world is very tumultuous right now. If you have a virtual component, you got a backup plan. You don't want to be in a position, a lot of people were last year, where they had to refund everybody. That's a disaster in the making. By having virtual as part of your package, even if, like I said, it's a hybrid event, you got some insurance. I'm going to skip this poll. So here's the biggest thing. If I don't give any other information today, it's this. Your event is not free. It costs you money, and it has value. Derek Johnson from the Tally Management Group, who I've talked to a number of times about this pricing issue, he says the largest mistake event planners have is giving their event away for free. We work with a lot of professional trade associations. Their annual conference is the big thing. Hey, you know what? If you give it away for free and one year, it's going to be a lot harder to charge the next year. People are going to expect that to be part of your membership services. And so if you do that, it's going to put you in a real bind going forward. It's just, as Derek would say, not a sustainable model. Your event has costs. I mean, the biggest one is staff, but of course you got the AV and all the technology that goes with it. The costs can be way down, but they're costs nevertheless. And you deliver value. The biggest value we're seeing in virtual is the education. And what's interesting is some studies have already shown that certain segments prefer virtual over face-to-face. In particular, the medical profession, a lot of them like the virtual conferences a lot more than the face-to-face conferences. So you're delivering real value. There's no reason to give it away for free. Free is appropriate sometimes if the event is sponsored. That makes sense. A benefit membership, I would say webinars kind of qualify as all that, not your annual conference, but webinars. Your mission of your organization, if it's to educate people, that makes sense to give that away for free. And of course, if it's a marketing event. That said, stay away from the word free. Use complimentary, no charge, including a membership. And the big thing is, if you have a sponsor, mention them and bring them in as much as possible. You should be always very grateful for your sponsors and promote them when you have the opportunity. So typically the costs, and I'll go into the actual fine tuning of the costs for virtual, are lower, and you don't have to travel. If you do things right, what'll happen is you actually get more attendees, and that will offset the lower registration costs. In fact, we've seen some records. Salesforce last year went from 15,000 face-to-face attendees to 80,000 virtuals. One of our conferences tripled in size, and Derek Johnson says he's typically seeing a 70% increase in attendance. So that the attendance numbers are really strong, and you can make that work in your favor if you charge. But basically, you need a general strategy. Especially if you depend on an annual meeting or one meeting, you need to come up with a general strategy of really a series of events to get to the revenue goals you need to be. Most people are saying the virtual event profits reduced. I'm going to point to some exceptions to that. But you need to plan on having a series of events to get you to your goal. If you're counting on one virtual event to hit your goal, you're really playing with a lot of risk there. So the key thing to everything, and once more, this is one of the main messages I want to bring home, is you got to do the tough work. And there's two parts in this tough work. One is an analysis of your situation, and the other one's experimenting. One is a little bit more concrete. Experimenting is, well, a little loosey-goosey, but I'll show you how experimenting can kind of help you get to your goal. So what's the analysis? Well, all these big costs are reduced in virtual. You don't have the hotel, travel, catering, collateral. AV is often, but not always, reduced. And this needs to be considered in terms of what you're passing on to the attendee. The attendee's not getting these services in return. You also need to take into account technology. Staffing is a real interesting issue. We're finding a lot of people are saying that the staffing for virtual is just as much, if not more, than face-to-face. Some people are saying it's lower, so it is kind of all over the place. Your revenue, I'm going to talking about registration. Sponsorships is much more difficult in virtual, but we're seeing that it is working a little bit better. It's more of an a la carte model rather than platinum, gold, and all that. People are buying specific things. In particular, I'm a big fan of session sponsors. Have someone sponsor a track and then allow them to speak an intro at the beginning of each one of them, show video. Even better, let them moderate, get them involved in the session. That way the sponsors actually feel like they're involved. And I could talk all day about sponsorships, but that's not what this is about today. But obviously sponsorships is very much part of the revenue model. Subscriptions is the area where I think a lot of people are kind of missing the opportunity there. You get these recordings, the on-demand recordings. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. First of all, you can allow people to purchase these sessions one at a time as needed after the conference or before. Buy a package. We've seen people do that, like a track for a session, and they're buying just the track. And then limited access. Don't allow them to see the videos forever. Our platform, we restricted for 90 days. Put some time limit in terms of how people can access it. if you feel like you have to, and I mean, I'm talking to people, and a lot of people do feel like they have to charge a lot less. One option is to charge more data. Joe Colangelo of Bear Analytics kind of brought this idea to me. Exhibitors and sponsors love data. Well, put more of it on your registration form. Say, you know, as part of getting this in at a real low rate, we need some more information from you. You know, it's not all good with virtual events. You know, the technical snafus. You know, face-to-face networking is pretty much, you know, a non-factor. Random happenings really don't happen much there. And FOMO, fear of missing out, is a real problem. Fear of missing out has been one of the biggest marketing tools in the last few years leading up to COVID, mostly through social media. So people say, I'm not going to go to the conference. They see all the social media that went on it. It's like, I blew it. I should have gone. So that's something that's kind of missing from virtual. So, you know, there's some negatives on the other side there too, for sure. Other things, going face to face, that too is not so appealing. There's a lot of travel restrictions, of course, going on, social distancing, wearing masks, safety, all that kind of stuff. So you kind of have to take that all into consideration when you're trying to figure out the value of your virtual offering. So let's start getting to the real meat of it. What should I charge? I know that's what everyone's thinking. Well, the first thing is some people are still a little timid about charging. So some people did pay what you can. That's a donation. I don't think that's much better than just making it complimentary. The better thing is to do the tough work I talked about. But here's the two slides that I'm sure a lot of people were waiting for. You know, what should I charge? Well, we have two approaches we've seen here. Derek of Tally, he says 10% kind of starting off, especially if you're not having you're still getting used to the technology and all that, which we saw a lot last year. And then further on, 30%. But if you do a lower rate, you make it clear it's a one-time thing, so you don't shock people by raising it. But here's the good news. At Event Rebels, we've actually seen some successes with the 30 to 50% discounts. We've actually had a couple conferences hit what we call the trifecta. And what is the trifecta? Well, first of all, they had record registrations. But the most important thing is they had a record profit. So the revenue was down, but the profit is up. And in the end, when you're paying your bills, it's the profit that counts. How did they do that? Well, the big thing was reducing their expenses. One of the conferences we did with our software, we integrate with Zoom. For example, there was an 800-person conference. They had a small staff. They rented laptops, ran the Zoom sessions off of there. So their costs were very, very low. Not only that, they actually got record high attendee evaluations. And for this particular group, and obviously this won't be the case with all groups, people really loved the conference. So they actually were successful financially and in terms of attendee happiness. So it is possible to be successful with all this, but you have to take into account, you know, all these things I've been talking about and how virtual is different. Still, I gave you a range, 30% off, 90% off. I think 90% is steep. So let's say 30, 50, 75. You know, how do you work through that? Well, you go back to your old tool that you did with face-to-face, which is early bird discounts. There's another big reason why you should work the early bird, and I'll talk about that shortly. But the early bird is going to help you figure out what the optimal price is, both for you and your attendee. A lot of people, we've seen the flash sales, 48 hours, they give a code to use it. That's also a useful tool. So I think those are the two things to kind of help you get to where your price point needs to be. But, you know, there's some things that people still are thinking the old model and not looking at new possibilities. So I'd like to talk about some new ways of thinking about this thing. Group discounts. Here's an interesting possibility. So my wife worked at a alumni organization for a university, and a major association had an alumni training conference. Great stuff. And they said they would send the entire department if they could, but obviously, you know, with travel, lodging, higher registration fees, it wasn't practical. Guess what? It could be practical now. Why not have a bring your department discount to your conference? Tiered access. I think this is the one that's going to be real important with hybrid. I think what we're seeing already in a trend in hybrid is the high cost of streaming. Maybe the only live stuff is the general sessions, and then everything else is recordings with maybe some Zoom Q&As and things like that. But people pay more to get to that tier, that live stuff. And the other things is the subscription packages that I've been talking about. So I mean, kind of brainstorm all the possibilities, and don't just think about the way things used to be done, because they aren't being done that way anymore. Here's the other big thing. Are virtual registrations last minute? The answer is absolutely yes. And this is why you need to work this early bird. Why is it last minute? Basically, people don't have to travel, so they can make this decision at the last second. It's just wreaks havoc with your planning. I've heard one horror story where 80% of the people traveled and signed up in the last week. I mean, you can't sleep, right? That's just terrible. So how do you fight it? Well, first of all, Dave McKinnon, my friend at Meeting Management Services, called our early adopter rate, get people feeling like they're cutting edge by doing it. But the big thing we've seen that's worked is called swag in a box. What's swag in a box? Basically, it's a small little box that they mail, has conference materials, sponsor materials, coffee cups, nice things. People are still spending too much time at home. This makes them feel, an extra touch point. And my feedback is that has been an effective mechanism to get people to register early. So that early bird discount really does need to be mixed with other elements. It's more than just saving money. You got to bring some other things to the table. So what's your keys to success? Got to do that analysis, especially the expenses. Then use early bird and incentives to figure out what your right price is. Take advantage of virtual. Take advantage of the fact that time isn't restricted. Geography is broken up. You got the whole world that can go to your conference now. Think out of the box with things like groups, senior department discounts. And then, of course, work those on-demand recordings, not just during the conference and not just after, even before the conference. Make that maybe one of the things. You can see the recordings first if you get, register early. I mean, think of all these possibilities. But the big thing is it's got to be part of a general pricing strategy. Oops. Let's see. Okay. Yes. So can we show that hybrid slide? Hang on. Well, my hybrid slide isn't showing up, but that's okay. So here's the big issue with hybrid. What I'm saying kind of applies to hybrid, but there's one big difference with hybrid. Like I said, where people are already running into two huge problems with hybrid events. What's a hybrid event? Let's get that real clear. The virtual event is happening at the same time as the live event. So the big problems is the high cost of streaming from the venues, but the bigger problem is staffing. You need to engage that virtual event, and if you have people engaging with the live people, you basically got to double your staff, a real problem. So I think what we'll see is not hybrid per se, but live plus virtual. And then maybe what you do, and what I talked about, maybe your general sessions are live, because basically you'll have the resources to have that extra person at the general session versus breakouts, which would be very difficult to get all these, extra person at each breakout. So I think that might be the future, is live plus virtual as opposed to hybrid. But in the end, you got to diversify your revenue stream. Don't count on just one event. Look at a whole series of things that can happen. Take advantage of the fact that you're not restricted to a venue for three days straight. So sorry for starting late, but hopefully some of you stuck around. So I want to see if there's any questions.
Casey, thank you very much for joining us. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, awesome, perfect. We had some technical issues getting in there, and to everybody that's watching, thank you for being so patient. And I know it was going to be a popular session of the day. Casey, we've got a few questions which I'd really like to run through you very quickly with you. Do you think we'll see dynamic pricing for virtual events like we see dynamic pricing in other parts of the events industry?
Are you talking about like early bird discounts, or are you talking about like the subscriptions and all that?
I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% sure because that's what the question said. But I would if it's coming to my mind, it's like supply and demand, So if it's maybe there's
one
some
of those,
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot of technology for actually kind of AI type of stuff out there for doing that. I think the big dynamic thing is packagings and those flash discounts and all that, because there's a lot of price discovery going on right now. So
Yeah, yeah. What do you think the average price is at the moment for a virtual event? Is there a sweet spot when it comes to price in a virtual event?
we're seeing that 30 to 50% being the sweet spot, kind of where you can make money and the attendees don't feel like they're spending too much. So like maybe a
Yeah,
$5.99 event might be $2.99 or $1.99, that kind of thing. But that's way better than free. That's what you don't want
absolutely.
to do.
There's that old saying, isn't there? That old adage that if something's free, you're probably the product. So maybe attendees will actually
Well,
value paying for something.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's why I joked about that charge more data, right? Because when data is just making you into a product. So yeah, if you're going to give it away for free, charge more data and make the person the product.
yeah, absolutely. And then there's just one other comment from the attendees here. They're asking you for a recommendation. So they say that we are currently giving our on-demand replay sessions away for free to anyone that's registered, and they're currently doing that as an open-ended offer. So that forever, by the looks of things. And they're asking you, but they say they think this is a great asset. But how would you recommend marketing that value to the attendees?
Well, a couple things. Forever kind of turns into free. So I like putting a window. We do 90 days, and that seems to be a reasonable window for everybody. 30 days, I think, is too short. Uh, Allowing people to log in and buy that stuff continuously, more registrations. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah,
And we see that.
awesome.
Why not?
Casey,
So, but yeah,
thank you very much for joining me today and for presenting and being so patient with us getting you in. For anybody that's watching, if you have further questions for Casey, do reach out to him on Event Rebels and or through the event platform. Casey, thank you for joining us, and to the attendees, we'll see you in the next session.
thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.